my bog. So I was weeding a bunch of weed trees out of my yard and figured that I'd make some trellises out of all these branches. Normally, this kind of technique would be saved for willow branches and be used in wattle and daub techniques, but I have a lot of weed trees, so let's try and make use of them. Here I have found all kinds of sugar maples, sumacs, and I think some elms. Kind of starting to forget already. All of the leaves are crumpled, so a little hard to tell. Tree identification is also definitely not my strong suit. So the rules I'm following here is I'm going to keep anything that is larger than my pinky, and then I am going to trim the branch once it gets to about half the thinness that it was at the base. The thought here is that any taper more than that is probably going to not be very useful within most cases. This is just the rule of thumb that I've been taught, but I'm sure in different cultures there are various different ways that you can go about selecting what size you want to keep and what size you want to go ahead and toss. So now it is time for some cleanup. If you don't have one of these kangaroo bags, I highly recommend them. They are so light and you can take so many weeds and pack them in. And here's my Frilito coming to give me some moral support. Okay, and back to it. There's also quite a bit left over from this process last year as well. Here we ended up getting a pretty good harvest. All of this would have just ended up getting burned in a bonfire or thrown in the compost pile to get rid of. And then we also have some branches from last year as well. So the techniques I'm using to make this trellis are called wattle. Normally they would be used, or mostly used, for wattle and daub. And wattle and daub is a building technique that's been used all over the world and it still is used today, where you combine weaving branches, much to the way that you would weave fabric or weave a basket, and then you combine them with daub, which is usually a combination of clay, sand, soil, and animal dung. But this combination would provide insulation, fire protection when properly maintained, and give a versatility that most materials would not allow you to have. So, welcome to the world of ethnobotany, the scientific study of the traditional knowledge and customs of people and how they use their plants. The utility of plants is one of the things that got me into it in the first place. The fact that you can get something that is utilitarian out of something as small as a seed with just time and patience is magical to me. So a lot of the times wattle will be basically self-adhering. It will hold itself together much like a basket would. You would be able to bend the ends of the sticks around and tuck them in a way that they'd hold themselves in place. But these variety of weed trees aren't really ideal for that. Most of these would just snap. So here I'm using a combination of wattle weaving techniques and lashing to build up a structure that will kind of make up. I have 3 shrub form willows and 2 tree form willows that are growing right now, but unfortunately they aren't large enough to do any kind of meaningful branch harvest from right now. So in the future I will do more projects that are more purely wattle, so that way I can demonstrate some of those techniques. When you're doing just wattle, typically that's reserved for things like fencing, walls, things that are less structural. And I think you get the point here, so we can go ahead and start skipping through these lashings like boom, 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 and I forgot that one. So now I'm just having some fun and trying to use up the rest of the branches. This kind of tighter pack weave is what would be behind the daub in the wattle and daub. So the daub would be a very clayey, plaster-like substance that would get kind of smushed into this weave pattern and then would have a plastery or rammed earth kind of finish to it. It would be used very similar to the way that plaster would be used later or in higher end buildings, and also gives a lot of flexibility in the way that concrete would during Roman times and later once we rediscovered how to do it again. And since I can't really tuck the ends around to keep them in, I'm doing this kind of ladder lashing to keep those edges on, because once again, these varieties of branches would just snap if I tried to bend those ends around to tuck them in. This is a pretty small panel, but this same kind of idea and technique could be extrapolated out to make entire walls, fencing, structures, you name it. There are many extant versions of pioneer housing and Native American housing that incorporates this basic idea of how to build up a wall. And it's just amazing to me that this bit of ancient plant usage traveled all around the world with humans and lasted so long that both Native Americans and Europeans were still using a very similar technique to build small hovels and cottages and things of that nature when they ran into each other, when they came to America and we reconnected after traveling opposite ways from Africa and met back up and still have this same ethnobotanical practice in common. It just blows my mind. And we had to remove that middle peg because there's no way that it was going to go in the ground. And so we're going to trim off both of those edges to a sharp point. That way we can actually get this sucker in the ground. And that one gave me some struggle. I did have to end up adding a couple A-frame braces as well to kind of just help keep the plant up. The ground here is pretty gravelly and has a lot of clay. This all used to be wetland. But we are getting it back to that, and I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out. This trash was turned into a beautiful trellis, and these invasive plants will help this wild grapevine grow and come to fruition. So here we have the finished trellis looking great. I would have gotten a close-up, but I forgot to do that. So like and subscribe. I'll do better next time. Bye.